Hi, I'm Milica Hinek, back with you today with Fay Daemi. Fay is an Iranian queer artist, activist, and researcher based in Hamilton. She is a PhD student at McMaster University in the Communications and New Media and Cultural Studies program, with research interests in theater and pedagogy. She is also a research assistant for the Intersection Project at McMaster University and a member of the Pedagogies of Hope Collective. So can you tell us more about yourself and the Intersection Project and Pedagogies of Hope in connection with your amazing research that you've been doing?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Fay Daemi, and as Nick said, I'm an Iranian international student here at McMaster University. My background is in theater and gender and social justice. And yeah, I've been working on two podcast projects during the last year and a half ago. So one of them is the Intersection Podcast, which is we go ahead and find people who are working on the intersection of race, gender, sex, relationship, and communication policies. And we interview them to get to know that, what they are doing and how they, answer our questions. And on the Pedagogies of Hope Collective, we are focusing on not mainstream learning and teaching, and mostly, the pedagogies of hope, which is the name of the collective. On that project, also, we are, having podcasts either related to the projects that we are doing, which can be, a performance or a conference that we are, doing. And also, we do have the series of interviewing with people about their research, mostly, activists, artists, and academics and scholars about their research, which is mostly, focused on not mainstream teaching and learning.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like you're creating new spaces for collective learning, for communal and local artists workshops, and it all involves that dialogue, those conversations. So can you tell us about your workshop experiences and how those communities that you've been working with mobilize their knowledge?
The workshop that we had on the pedagogies of hope was, based on how after COVID, the whole, pedagogy has, we witnessed a little bit of a shift on the pedagogy. We had this, all hybrid places and opportunities that we can go to, and all the, other, now we can call them, not mainstream way for learning and teaching. And, actually the Pedagogies of Hope workshop was one of the, the best experiences I had on the, either attending a workshop or, managing or organizing one. So yeah, it was a pretty friendly, intimate, and space for getting to know each other, people with, that you find, some like-minded people. It was a very good place for networking, and workshop had the opportunity to interview with some of our participants. And in some of our episodes, we had an undergrad students and prof at high-ranked university that sat together and had, conversations about pedagogy and the ways of learning and teaching. And they are really, some interesting conversation happened through that. And I loved it.
Excellent. Yeah, my research is based on academic podcasting and knowledge mobilization practices and the different ways academics are utilizing the medium. So Pedagogies of Hope is a perfect example of how they're using podcasting to share experiences and share, I guess it's kind of like a think tank too. You're trying to create new ways of teaching and new ways of learning, right? What are your academic podcasting approaches with this project?
They're mostly, how we go through the conversation. Some of them are, just basically, organic. to make sometimes, even when we have our casual conversations with each other as a, group of friends, we start, just hit the record button and start, recording it, which is, really interesting. Like our first episode ever, it was the night before our 2 days workshop that we get together in one of our members' place, and we were just baking cookies. Then we had this mic at the middle, and we just, record our conversation about how we feel about the workshop that's going to happen tomorrow or the day after, I'm not sure. And it was, pretty fun and organic conversation that just, came through, and we decided to, not limit ourselves and just, I don't want to call it, verbal vomit, but it was like that. We just started, talking what we had in our head and start, this interesting conversation, which led beautiful brainstorming or getting to know what should we do about the whole project and stuff like that. So I think for us, it is mostly organic, especially if there is, a group of people that's getting together to have just, friendly conversations. But with the episodes that we have with researchers that we want to talk about specifically about the research, we come up with some sample questions about the research, and we get to, and ask them those questions and continue the conversation kind of organically to see what the conversation goes. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but yeah, that's how we are dealing with stuff.
Yeah, no, excellent. Yeah, no, I like how you used your space in connecting with your team. It was your research team, and you used food to connect, right? Food as a conversation. Yeah, that's excellent. That's such a great idea. I would love to have, I feel all my interviews are on Zoom, so it's like, what do I do on Zoom to make it more fun?
Yeah, exactly. And some of us just like when we have those some sort of interesting conversation that we think it might be useful for one of our podcasts, when we are talking with a friend or with our partner, we just hit the button and send to each other, what do you think about this part? Like, we had a lot of cool quotes in our day-to-day conversation that it could be a cool part for a podcast that we are working on. So yeah, it is a pretty fun experience that it's going through, and it is becoming something really meaningful and really cool to listen to. Yeah
It brings individual into the picture, like their characteristics, their quirks. They say a joke, and I like how
exactly
you just press record, and it would be interesting to press record and just pretend that you're not being recorded. Then make sure everything sounds all perfect. Yeah.
And to be honest, I think that's what we need through the in academia, to be not always get together and pretend that everything is perfect, and it has to be perfect for going through the academic archive, academic podcast, academic knowledge mobilization. I think especially students need to know that even fun, quirky, silly, ideas can get into academia, and you don't need to be a very into the box person to get yourself to the academia. And I know that it is hard for people like me to be. I have ADHD. I'm a queer person, late in life queer person. I'm international student. Blah blah. It is already really hard for me to get to the maybe make a career out of my studying. But when I get to know these people and the community that I'm working with, it gives me hope that even someone like me might have a chance to get into this, fun, safe, diverse community that they can get into. So I think that's what, at least I think I owe to other students. I think that they might not be good enough for academia. So yeah, I'm still not sure if I'm good for academia, but at least I'm doing my PhD and I feel good. So let's see how I feel in 10 years.
You're good. You're
Maybe
good
we have
now.
to re-record this conversation in 10 years, and I would say that, okay, God bless academia. It wasn't the place for me. I'm having my farm somewhere growing chickens. So
I love it. Yeah, no, I feel the same. I feel we all feel the same, to be honest. You get to that point where you're just like, is this research really meaningful? Am I the right person to be doing this? Does it make sense? Yeah, you second guess yourself, you triple guess yourself. And then we're all wearing all these hats, right? We all have these roles in our life. I feel that pressure and that I guess that's one limitation or challenge that we have as being an academic podcaster or a scholar, a researcher, and working with communities helps. It helps us find that sense of belonging. It helps us find our niche communities. And then we make those strong connections and we work together and we have fun with it. It makes it fun. I don't know. I find
yeah,
it makes it fun, right?
yeah.
Speaking about limitations or challenges, what other challenges do you see with research projects like Pedagogies of Hope and your other project, Intersection Project? What do you find most challenging?
In podcasting, I feel like the most challenging part would be it isn't like, reaching out to people. I don't want to say that I hate my voice because I do.
Oh.
And whenever I hear,
Oh.
it is really hard for me to hear to the podcast that I was, part. And, as I said, English is my second language. And sometimes I feel, a little bit like, oh, my English is not that good. Why am I putting myself into the roles that I have to be the one to talk always? And I don't like my voice. I someone with, maybe with better English can do that. And I don't know, it is a personal challenge for me, honestly, but I cannot hide that how much I love doing that, how much I love being a host in a podcast, and getting to know all these people and about their research, what kind of people they are, and raising questions while I'm having conversations with them. That's the really interesting part for me, that I can be creative within recording episodes. I am going to prepare myself and do all the props for the episode, but being on a spot and having some comments and making the conversation move around, that's my favorite thing of being a host in a podcast. But I think the limitation for me, besides hating my own voice, is the language barrier. But I think I'm getting there, and also I think it's cool. That's for me the biggest limitation, I guess. The other thing can be sometimes when you are, interviewing with someone and having a conversation is, I guess, you're not politically agree with the person, or that's another part. But you're hosting it, and that's your job. You have to deal with it. So that's another hard thing that I feel like it is a little bit hard for me to deal with it.
Yeah, thank you. You have a great voice. I think everyone over critiques themselves. Everyone does. They're like, oh no, I sounded horrible.
Yeah, may I ask what others ask this question about the limitation for the podcasting? That's really interesting for me.
When it comes to language barriers, I don't think that anyone had any issues with language. I had Kim Fox interviewed a couple weeks back, and she's from Egypt, and she basically does a podcast in different languages to afford all of the different cultures that live in the area. So I know that there's a lot of work being done there with language barriers. English is primarily the most common that's being used with the podcasters that I've asked. But yeah, those were the major. And Roxana's, she's actually doing all Spanish, and translating it into English because her community is from Lima, Peru, and she wants their voices to be heard and have that reward. Usually you would think that, oh, we're going to do an English podcast and translate it into Spanish.
That's so cool. Yeah.
I find that there's always limitations, but I feel like the audio part of it, you can still treat it as a do-it-yourself type of recording, and your voice, it shares your lived experience. It's natural, it's authentic. Like you don't want to pretend you're somebody you're not, right? And I feel like
Yeah.
if you're telling and sharing other people's stories, what better way than through their voice, right?
Thank you.
Your role as an activist and artist. So this taps into Brandon Edwards Schuth's CPM, the critical podcasting methodology. So he speaks about academic podcast activist going into communities, and you said it was a challenge trying to keep politics out of it. So what examples do you have where you were challenged with those, I guess, conversations? How did you facilitate those conversations as a host?
For this point, I would rather to start to my role as an interviewer, because we are doing that episode and we are recording that episode to show our audience, about that person's research and what they are working on and what they are, up to, and it's not gonna be about me. So I think I would rather to start to the role of interviewer and not starting a debate that might not go well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's like anthropology. You have the interlocutor and they're facilitating the conversation. Yeah, you stick to your role. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I had this experience on interviewing for some qualitative research. And when you're doing qualitative research, you just want to know about that person's experience, their feeling, what happened, about them. It's not like, you don't want to reflect on what they are, talking about. So you just want to get out of that person as much as you can, so you would have, your episode. I'm not saying that, doing an interview for a podcast, it is like, a qualitative research, because we talked a little bit about how we can, use all the podcasts as some sort of, even for a data gathering and archive. But at the same time, I'm not, saying that they are the same thing, but I feel like it is better for us, especially if you are interviewing someone about their research, to just let them to explain and what they're working on and stuff like that. I raise some sort of question about they think that if I had, but I won't press on that if there is any politically on agreement if I have with that person. I've just raised it as a question.
And then with those interviews, would you, I guess, reflect upon them after the fact? Or would that be like a different study? Would you like synthesize the data or look through and, I don't know, make connections between the interviews of the project that you're working on? I'm just trying to see how other ways, or do you just use it specifically for dissemination? Like podcasting as a method of dissemination?
I think it is mostly as a dissemination, but especially for the intersection podcast. But for the Pedagogies of Hope project, we are experiencing anything that we have in mind and how we can, some sort of work on that, work with the ideas that we have. For example, we are thinking of having a series of, working on the research about the queer studies and queer life, and we are trying to make connection between some of the episodes and between the interviews. So I think we are doing all this stuff and to see what would work better.
Yeah, experimenting with it. Playing around. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. See what works.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. I'm going to wrap things up. What are your hopes for your academic podcast community?
For my academic podcast community, sometimes I feel like I wish there was a podcast for every single reading that I have to read for my reading list, for my, I don't know, for the readings that I have to read for my courses and stuff like that, to discuss about different point of views. I'm pretty sure that there are some, but I'm not sure if this is the answer of your question, but I really love that if we can go through that way too. And if you know any podcast that does that about their readings, that we know my reading communications, especially in cultural studies and feminist and queer studies and performance studies, that I would love to start listening to that. The hope, I would say that especially for younger kids, sometimes reading it would be really not just boring, it is sometimes impossible for some of us, other all the disabilities and learning a style that we are more comfortable with. So I would hope that for the podcast in academia it would be more accessible for everyone. And I would like to mention that there is a difference between a podcast about a book, about an article, and just audiobook or PDF to audio applications that we have.
One of the other takeaways from majority of the interviews, it was hard to find one single database where all scholars are throwing all of their information. It's really difficult. Like, some are using different platforms like SoundCloud, some are using their own websites, YouTube, Spotify.
Yeah, we are using Spotify now because it is free.
Once you find the platform that you like, I think that's the thing where you need to just tell everyone about it. And I know our university at Mac, we are getting a database, so that will be good for all the podcasts. They're working on that.
Yeah, it's true.
Now I have my signature question. What are your favorite podcasts you listen to?
Honestly, the favorite podcast that I listen to, they are all in Farsi. So I'm not sure if you want me to go ahead and introduce them. They are, Farsi podcasts that I normally listen to, and some other, like feminist agenda and handsome. I like that too. So those are the things that I have. There's another thing that I'm looking at my Apple podcast. It's Feminist Book Club. So yeah, those are the things I guess that I'm listening to.
Excellent. I'll add those to the show notes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Faye. You've helped audiences understand that podcast conversations can be fun. You gave us great examples of how you used improvisation, and you like to keep organic dialogue. You like to keep the conversation natural, free. You gave us such a good example of how podcasts can be used for brainstorming ideas. By cooking in the kitchen. I love it. Quote, you just hit the record button, end quote. It doesn't have to be perfect. And the host can be silly or quirky at times, and this is okay. That completes our series of the academic podcast entanglements. I hope everyone can reflect and continue the conversations in their own spaces. Ciao for now.